Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Obviously, people are going to continue trickling in, but we have a lot of stuff to cover. Did everyone have a good time last night at Buffalo Billiards? Did anyone have too good of a time? They're not here yet. Those people, we'll point them out as they come in. So just to get an idea of where people are at so we know who we're talking to, how many of you are already using CiviCRM? Just one. How many of you want to implement CiviCRM at an organization you work for or as part of your job for other organizations? And the rest of you just don't want to learn anything more about Node.js? Is that why you're here? Excellent. All right. Yes, clients are another group. So, well, now I'm going to let Peter introduce himself first. So I will switch this. Okay, so yeah, we'll go backwards. So my name is Kevin Reynen. I am K Reynen on Drupal, CiviCRM, and Twitter. I'm also the first Kevin if you search for Drupal and CiviCRM. And you can also find me because of my crazy facial hair throughout the year. I do a series of screencasts I term beardcasts. Throughout the year, I grow a giant mountain man, homeless man beard, and then shave it down while documenting the code I wrote during the time I was growing the beard. Yes, my wife loves it. So it's pretty easy to find me. And so I work for a company called Make Data Make Sense, and one of the services we offer is a little help hosting. And one of the things we do is try to make Drupal and CiviCRM easier to use. And we started that with just Drupal and Civi, but then started adding more functionality to that and got to the point where we were actually providing, instead of a little help, we were providing a lot of help. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about is the use of the CiviCRM Starter Kit as a distribution to kind of make this stuff easier. But I'm going to let Peter introduce himself and talk about what Square does. I'm going to stop talking.
Hey, it's kind of windy here this morning, isn't it? All right, good morning. My name is Peter Petrik. I got a Drupal and CiviCRM development company called Square. Despite its spelling, it's pronounced Square. I'm on Drupal.org and CiviCRM forums and IRC and just about everywhere else you can find me. I usually go by the handle of Slovak. That's just how you find me. And Kevin basically asked me, I mean, we both have been working with CiviCRM, and Kevin basically asked me to step in and help with the community effort. I'm based in Dallas, and we run the local CiviCRM meetup there. We got about 60 people that are signed up for it and been running it for about 3 years. So we've got a pretty good community. Square, generally speaking, handles a lot of the community management tools for nonprofits, for membership organizations, professional associations, etc. So many of our clients and many of our projects involve Drupal and CiviCRM in some kind of way, shape, or form. And that's what we'll be talking about a little bit later on is how to kind of bridge that gap between Drupal and CiviCRM and where one kind of ends naturally and where the other one begins and where each one of them shines and how you can bring them all together.
All right, so some important dates about distributions. How many of you went to the Acquia presentation yesterday about the demo distribution framework? A couple of you? How many of you are familiar with Pantheon or went to any of the sessions? Okay, so most of you are familiar with that. So distributions have the idea and desire to do distributions has been around a long time. Boris Mann, one of the original Drupal Association members, did a presentation at what is now called the original DrupalCon in Sunnyvale, which had approximately as many people as are here today at it. Did a presentation about what if Drupal wasn't a CMS out of the box? What if instead of shipping just a CMS, we shipped a core framework that did nothing and everything was a distribution. That was in 2007. In 2009, I was working for a Knight Foundation funded project that, along with another Knight Foundation project and the Drupal Association, raised $20,000 to make packaging distributions on Drupal.org a reality. That was when you saw the first downloads other than a CMS from Drupal.org. That had a lot of limitations because only code that was hosted on Drupal.org could be included in that distribution. And it wasn't until March of 2012 that Acquia Phase 2 and a number of the other larger Drupal shops made an additional investment in install profiles that allowed us to package third-party libraries. The original intent was to package small things like jQuery libraries, but I went ahead and made this request to package CiviCRM, which, believe it or not, is actually bigger than Drupal.org. So CiviCRM is both a module or set of modules that are added to Drupal to allow the two systems to communicate, but it is its own code base and CRM, similar to Salesforce, Sugar, that type of thing. So the same code can be used with WordPress or Joomla with different connector modules. So what you're downloading is actually, when you download CiviCRM, is actually a larger code base than Drupal. So to get to the point where we were able to package that, Drupal set a 10 meg packaging limit. We had to remove a lot of the third-party libraries that CiviCRM includes. And these should be libraries that you're probably familiar with from adding to Drupal and the sites all libraries. The reason why these are included in CiviCRM, in addition to being included in Drupal, is that CiviCRM is designed to be self-contained. It is extendable. You can add extensions to it, similar to how you add modules to Drupal or plugins to WordPress, as well as customizing the theme and things along those lines. But unlike Drupal, that when you download the initial install, the experience often leaves a little bit to be desired. CiviCRM is a full-blown, completely configured CRM out of the box. There's a few additional things that you can turn on that aren't on automatically, but it is more of a product than a framework. So the reason why we went through all this trouble to package CiviCRM on Drupal.org instead of just going to SourceForge, downloading it, and installing it like we normally would, has a lot to do with the experience that most of us who implement CiviCRM had during the early days of Drupal 7. And that is issues with CiviCRM compatibility with views, with entity, and date. There were specific releases of CiviCRM that worked with specific releases of date and entity. And then date and entity would update, sometimes with the security update, so people would have that nice red warning on every page of their admin and want to apply that update. Applying the security update to Drupal broke this integration with CiviCRM. Updating CiviCRM for a security release broke the update to Drupal. So we're past that point now in the CiviCRM Drupal compatibility with Drupal 7. But if we had been using a distribution during that initial Drupal 7 release, there would have been a larger group of people looking at the same information and figuring out which versions of things were actually compatible and stable and ready to deploy. And so part of the goal of developing the starter kit was to standardize on those versions so that when Drupal 8 ships, we don't have to go through that same pain. So the starter kits have specific versions in them. And there's this Thoreau quote about going it alone. The man who goes alone can start today. So if you want to figure things out and upgrade to a version, go for it. But if you're going to travel with everyone else, you're going to have to wait. And that's kind of a good mantra for when working with a community. So everyone's familiar with Don't Hack Core, right? This is something that you've been ingrained with from the moment you sign up for Drupal.org. Don't hack a distribution either. The way distributions are structured allows you to override anything that's included in the profiles where the distribution is, where the modules for that distribution are, by adding the same module or a patched or newer or even older version of that into your site's all modules. So if you want to use a version of views that isn't in the kit, that is a development release or something beyond what most of the people that are using the distribution are using, you can totally do that. If it works, we'd love to get the feedback that I tried the latest version of Views and everything seems to be working fine. If it doesn't work, posting that is just as helpful, so that we know that there's something that needs to be looked at before the next upgrade. So the idea behind this CiviCRM Starter Kit is to build additional distributions that are customized for niche communities. And we do that already within the community media environment. So we take the CiviCRM Starter Kit and we add a lot of media modules on top of that. And then we have a number of organizations that are all using the same base code for that. So another advantage of using the distribution that gets to be a little overwhelming for most Drupal developers or site builders is the security updates with CiviCRM. And one of the things that a distribution does is it allows the distribution maintainer to delay the announcements of module updates by any number of days and only show you down here that the version of the starter kit that contains all these modules needs to be updated or is up to date. And so basically, you've eliminated one additional thing that you would need to do as a site builder, maintainer, developer, which is check the compatibility of all of these versions, because we're doing that for you upstream. So when the CiviCRM Starter Kit is updated with a new version of CiviCRM and a new version of Drupal core and a new version of Views or CTools or whatever, you know that that's already been tested with all of the core modules. Now, that's not to say that we tested it with every module and extension that's available for Drupal or CiviCRM. Obviously, there's tens of thousands of those now, and the quality of those varies. But if you're sticking to popular modules, you can be pretty confident that when these updates come out, they are not going to break your site. So the process of updating Drupal with using a starter kit that includes CiviCRM is unfortunately the same. So you have to download the whole core and then take your site's all modules, the things that you've overridden and customized, put that in there, and then apply the updates to both Drupal with the update.php and CiviCRM with CiviCRM/upgrade. Unless you're using Pantheon. So if you're using Pantheon, you're going to be alerted to this update through your Pantheon dashboard, and then your ability to apply the update as well as what was included in the update is handled on the Pantheon side. So that really simplifies things. It turns what could be a 10, 15-minute task per site into something that takes just a few seconds. And then you also have the interface for testing that and pushing those changes up from dev to test to live. So the CiviCRM Starter Kit is already available on Pantheon. You can spin these up for free at any time. I'll be demoing some configuration based on that. This isn't the only way you can use the Starter Kit. You can download the Starter Kit distribution and install that on any host. Peter and I can talk if people have questions, but the general rule of thumb is that if you're using a hosting hotel, the $6 and $7 a month hotel, hosting providers, you may be able to get CiviCRM installed, but it's not going to run very well. So,
like the hosting hostel.
a hostile host. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. It's true for Drupal as well. If you add enough modules to a DreamHost site, you're going to start to get performance problems there as well. And CiviCRM is the equivalent of adding dozens and dozens of modules. So we're going to go through some actual demos on a few different sites about modules we use that make the integration between Drupal and CiviCRM easier. There are a few modules that synchronize information between the two systems. So CiviCRM Web Form obviously integrates information entered from web form into CiviCRM. Group and membership sync do the opposite. They take membership information from CiviCRM and apply that to Drupal. So if somebody's membership expires, they're removed from a role in Drupal. So if you have to pay to have access to a specific site and your payment lasts for 1 year, you have a lot of options for how to control when that person no longer has access to that. And then Civi Multi-Day Event is a module that we wrote to deal with the fact that Civi's date structure is different than Drupal. And so we created a structure that creates a date-based structure in Drupal that works with full calendar and calendar the same way any Drupal developer would understand working with date, but actually creates a corresponding event in CiviCRM as well. So those modules all synchronize data between the two systems. So if you were to remove CiviCRM after integrating web form CiviCRM, all of your web form data would still be there. Same thing with your group role membership. If you remove CiviCRM, everyone that's in the role stays in the role. You don't need to use both of them. Other modules that connect the two systems temporarily or through a pull request that require both systems to be there are CiviCRM, and I'm going to show how that works. How many of you have tried to configure CiviCRM? No one? Someone? So this has gotten much easier in 4.3, but there's a Drupal module that actually calls CiviCRM from Drupal that makes this even easier. Views and rules are two modules that, if you have them configured correctly, expose a lot of functionality from Civi to Drupal. And then features, CiviCRM, which allows you to capture a lot of configuration in features. So I'm going to hand it over to Peter to demo some of this stuff.
So any of you actually integrated Drupal CiviCRM in between with some of these modules that Kevin's talked about? Nobody? Does that sound like an interesting
reference? Let's see. Or do you want me to do that when you talk?
Try this again. Try again.
It's switching on there. I'm going to switch it on here. Do you want to pull that up over here?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up over there. That's going to be our backup. All right, go for it.
We'll edit this out of the video, right?
Cool.
All right.
Just go to Gorba. All right, so here's one of the websites we did for a mountain biking association out of Houston. Believe it or not, Texas is actually a popular mountain biking place. And so obviously the front end, the content management, all of that runs on Drupal. And they've got a lot of very interesting features. They've got you can update their trails status. We were actually able to integrate that with some, like if they're closed, they show up in red and it pushes out automatically to Twitter and everything else, so people don't even have to go to the website and check if something's open or closed, etc. But the interesting part with CiviCRM comes in play if you go under forums. You can go down to, let's see what's going on, and let's pick a thread with a bunch of posts. And what you can start seeing here is these little icons, and when you hover over it, it'll tell you, okay, that little icon stands for somebody who's a member. That icon means that they're a member and a trail steward, which means they're taking care of a particular trail. Down here we got a little star. That means they're a board director. So what this basically does is it takes the membership information. So this is using the CiviMember Sync functionality between the Drupal and CiviCRM, and it's taking their membership status, and if they're a member, it's showing up that little cyclist icon on their profile. Now, it's a very simple kind of an integration thing, but you'd be surprised in a lot of these community organizations, having that status on, just like, you know, if you're a member of Drupal.org or anything like that, you're putting that little icon there. That little status makes a lot of difference in terms of people actually renewing their membership, because if they don't have that icon, first thing they go is, hey, where's my icon? Why am I not a member? Gorba was a great success story for implementation, Drupal and CiviCRM. They were running on an old HTML-based system, and they had about 5 different spreadsheets where they tried to keep track of their members. And literally within 90 days after they went live with this new system and pulled everything together, so they didn't just have PHP BB forums over here and spreadsheets over here and maybe constant contact over here, they pulled it all together into Drupal and CiviCRM installation. Within 90 days, their membership had gone up 37%. Literally came back to us and said, what else can we do? We want to invest more money into our website. What else can you do for us? Because we just seen such a great response. They didn't do a membership drive. They didn't do anything different except relaunch their online presence. And it's this kind of interconnection between the Drupal and the CiviCRM, where really CiviCRM for the most part lives on the back end of things, right? That you can incorporate the data from your CiviCRM site, such as membership or being in a particular group, and then utilize it either with a particular role or in some other fashion on the Drupal side. I'm going to talk about the rules, if that's okay. A lot of times, how many of you have done some kind of a membership functionality on the, or would be interested in doing a membership functionality within your organization? I had a few of you, okay. So, and Kevin kind of alluded to this, you know, there's data that kind of lives in Drupal, in CiviCRM, or at points is kind of synced in between, but it's present in both. And one of those is you can have thousands of records in CiviCRM. That's your main contact database, but not everybody from there might have an account on your Drupal site, right? Because here you might have a list of prospective members, donors, etc., people that may not necessarily be accessing your website. Well, in this particular case, if you're a member and you're going to join, you want to give them the option of actually logging in, being on the forum, having their username, getting their little icon, etc. Well, by default, if somebody goes in and joins, this does not, it creates their CiviCRM account, but it doesn't do anything on the Drupal side, right? So then the functionality is built in there to say, okay, now go register on the Drupal side, and if your email's matched, then those records are matched up together, so you know this Drupal user ID is this CiviCRM contact ID, right? But for an average user, they kind of register and they go, okay, now how do I log in, right? They don't want to go and say, okay, great, thanks for becoming a member, now go here and register and validate your email and all that kind of stuff. So what we're doing here is using the entities module, the CiviCRM entities module, and the rules to say when the membership is created, and there is nothing to really show per se, because if you know how to configure rules, you know where that is, and it doesn't look fancy in any way. But you can set it up in such a way where when they join as a member, upon the membership being approved, not pending, but actually membership being approved and current, means that new account is being created automatically. So they can go to this page, come here, fill out their information, confirm their contribution as a member. They get an email that says, thank you for becoming a member, and then they get a second email that says, welcome to our Gorba website. Here is your username and password. Please go ahead and log in. As soon as they log in, the CiviCRM member sync comes in play, gives them the icon, they can start posting on the forum right away. So there is no secondary step involved that's necessary there. You want to jump and do some of yours now? Sure.
If you guys have questions about this while we're going over it, feel free to shout out. This really isn't am never comfortable with people just talking at an audience. So let us know what isn't making sense. So I just want to show real quick the CiviCRM scheduled jobs, because this is something that is substantially more complicated than Drupal's scheduled jobs, because you have a lot of things that are date-based going on, like signing up for an event triggers an email right when you sign up, but usually before an event you want to automatically send them an email reminding them that they signed up for an event. In Drupal, a lot of modules have cron hooks, and those just kind of run in the background and work automatically. In Drupal 6, you either had to configure a cron tab job on your server, or use cPanel to configure cron, or install a module called Poor Man's cron. In Drupal 7, the Poor Man cron functionality is automatically included, because Drupal came to the realization that most people don't want to try to configure a command line cron tab. So let's just run cron periodically if the site is active. So CiviCRM was the same way. Before Civi 4.2, you actually had to configure a separate cron tab for each one of these scheduled jobs. They do everything from check to see if you have any bounced emails from a mass mailing, update pledge information, send SMS messages, update member status, update participation status, all of the types of things that you want happening after specific dates or events happen on the site. So with CiviCRM, what we've done is to tap into the Drupal cron functionality and made the process of configuring Civi and Drupal much easier. So I'm going to remove this. So what you had to do before was look up this CiviCRM site key in your CiviCRM settings.php file. This is a second file that's created similar to Drupal's settings.php that has the database connection information and a lot of top-level settings for your CiviCRM instance. But we need this site key to authenticate the fact that we're actually able to run cron, similar to how Drupal now requires that in Drupal 7. You can't just go to cron.php anymore, because we realized that everyone knew that, and if you had a lot of cron hooks, that was a very easy way to make a site unavailable for everyone, just running cron over and over again on it. So what we do here is we actually look up, so if this is blank and you've just installed it, you don't even have to go in to look up that site key. Because Drupal is aware of CiviCRM and all those variables are available, we just grab that site key. So if you do update Civi and you change this, that is automatically looked up. So once you have the site key registered in Drupal, it will tell you that it's being able to run Civi's cron successfully. If you don't have the site key correct, you get the same warning that you would see when configuring Civi's cron yourself. So this is a job that, when implementing CiviCRM, was something that was different than Drupal. And usually took an additional 10 or 15 minutes to do, and had to be reconfigured every time you updated CiviCRM or updated that Civi settings file. Now we've made that a lot easier and kept things in sync. So it's important to understand that these functions are different, but it's also something that we've, in the starter kit or downloading the CiviCRM module, we've made more similar. So I can demo a few more modules, but I want to get through some other things first. So Civi has the same type of overrides that Drupal has. So Civi can be extended with extensions. There's Civi native functionality that you can add to CiviCRM just like you're adding another module to Drupal. CiviCRM has hooks and TPL files that you can override to show things in a customized theme or to alter the default Civi functionality. CiviCRM does use Drupal coding style in its PHP files, so it should look pretty familiar to Drupal developers, but it is a different system, so in a different code base. So the things that make it pretty different are, like I said before, it's self-contained, so all of the libraries you need to make Civi work are included in the original download. It's substantially bigger than Drupal because it has all of this functionality working out of the box. And you have to configure where you want, great, I have a typo in there, where you want your extensions and custom themes. In Drupal by default, you have sites all modules, and then you have your default, and you can do overrides in either one of those. In CiviCRM, you actually have to configure where you want that. But probably the biggest difference for designers, and the reason why I think a lot of people are looking to solutions like Red Hen or a Drupal native solution, is because of the Smarty template engine. How many of you use Drupal 4 or Drupal 5? Just one. We've eliminated all of those, all of the previous users. So there was a time in Drupal where not everything was the PHP template engine, and Smarty was actually an option for Drupal. And Smarty is substantially different than the PHP template engine, but so is Twig. So if you're dealing with a developer themer who's like, I don't want to learn new things, well, guess what? You're not going to be able to move to Drupal 8 anytime soon, because it's going to be different again. So the big difference is that the Smarty template engine is designed to fulfill what PHP was originally intended to do. So who knows what PHP stands for? Pre-hypertext processing. The original idea was you had data and functionality, and then you had your display layer. And these things would stay separate. We weren't going to just mingle everything together, and you'd have HTML interspersed with your PHP. Drupal, as a CMS, decided to go that route and allow themes to run full-blown PHP functions. And with Twig, it's even more confusing, because themes can actually run hook alters. So anytime you're looking at functionality on a page and you're not sure why it's happening the way it is, you now actually have to check the theme as well, because that might be what's causing a change in the form instead of just the modules. But in Smarty, you're really confined to what you can change. So instead of PHP print foo, print a variable, the markup looks like this. So there's a lot of just procedural logic you can do, but we can't call into Drupal to the depth, or CiviCRM to the depth that you can with Drupal theming. So at the theming layer, you're more restricted, and that's a good thing. So with the organizations we deploy this on, we often explain that Drupal is where you can do the more experimental, move things along faster. And CiviCRM, your constituent management system, that's something you want very stable. You don't want people going in and writing PHP code in your templates for CiviCRM, that when the next version of CiviCRM comes out, you're actually causing problems with event registration or membership expiration. So the syntax here is, I mean, it's not rocket science, it's just different. So the Smarty Debug equals 1. This is something that is the equivalent of devel for theming in PHP. So I'm actually going to copy that from here. So if I add this when debugging is on my site, if I add this to any page, any CiviCRM page I'm looking at, oh, I do have it open, it's going to pop open another window and give me all of the elements that I have access to in my TPL. So instead of using the devel module to see what that information is on the Drupal side, you have access to everything CiviCRM knows about this page on using this Smarty Debug equals 1. So I can see here that this is an event, and I can go in and modify its event title, or I can deal with anything I want to change in there. And the way I do that is the same way as I've done it in Drupal. So I have my install here. So in my profiles, I have the CiviCRM Starter Kit, and I have the libraries, modules, and themes. But I've created an overridden theme in my sites all modules just for CiviCRM. And in here, I have some of the templates I've overridden. So if I open up this page of TPL, this looks not that different from a Drupal TPL file. The big difference is instead of the PHP tags, we have these Smarty tags. But I can go in here and modify any of the information I want. So I've taken the default TPL files from CiviCRM, just like you would override a Zen theme or an Omega theme or any kind of custom TPL work you're doing in Drupal, and I'm applying that to to the CiviCRM template instead. So and the syntax, I think, is actually a lot easier than dealing with Drupal's objects or arrays from hell, or arrays of doom, depending on which session you're in. Because you don't have to worry about everything's an array, and the syntax is just object dot array dot item dot item dot item. So it's all spelled out for you in the debug, so you can see exactly what you want to get access to and what you want to modify. But the limitation is that you have very simplistic procedural logic, if then and case statements and for each. You can't get as crazy as you can in Drupal with whatever PHP you want. Does that make sense? It's like yes. Okay, so starter kits versus product distribution. So this is what we often get into with our clients about whether a Drupal CiviCRM solution is the best way to go. And the reason why we use a starter kit versus a full-blown distribution for CiviCRM is this idea of product versus starter kit. And the starter kit is designed for you to build on and customize. It is not like OpenAtrium, where it is what it is and you end up working against it. So the pros of using Drupal and CiviCRM, even if you're using the starter kit or downloading it directly, is it has the most features, integration, and customization possible of any of the CRM solutions we implement within Drupal. So because both Drupal and CiviCRM are open source, everything is available for you to customize and override. The downside of it is that it's not 100% Drupal. CiviCRM does require more CPU and memory than Drupal if you're going to run it on the same server in the same namespace, versus something like CiviCRM and Salesforce, where you have a very stable software as service solution with Salesforce. There's a lot of modules to integrate that, handle the CMS content within Drupal, and then do the event registration membership management in Salesforce. You can do the same type of, if someone's paid for a membership, then update their Drupal group using Salesforce. The difference is Salesforce, with the exception of the nonprofit limited edition that doesn't have really any of the features that a nonprofit would actually need, that you can download and run locally, you have to run it as a software as service. You are locked in to using hosted apps on the Salesforce cloud environment, and obviously there's a pretty substantial cost to using Salesforce. But I always tell people that Salesforce is like IBM was in the 80s. I mean, no one's going to get fired for integrating Salesforce at a nonprofit. It is the gold standard. It is an excellent product. It's just not something you can hack, modify, override, so you're limited in what you can do with it. But the big one is the Drupal native CRMs. This is something that's been around for a while. Red Hen is probably the most popular thing that people know about. Obviously, if you're doing everything in Drupal, there's a lot of integration and customization possible because it's all there for you. The cons, though, and the reason why we don't recommend that organizations use it are upgrades, documentation, and the community of nonprofits versus for-profits. So major upgrades to distributions are really hard. There's a lot of moving parts. CiviCRM has a track record of doing this incredibly well. How many of you used OpenAtrium in Drupal 6? Couple. So how many of you tried to upgrade that to the new OpenAtrium in Drupal 7? No, nobody even attempted that. How many people think that Phase 2 should have got their Drupal 7 OpenAtrium out a year ago? Same thing with Commerce. Even in Drupal 7, there's no upgrade path from Commerce 1 to Commerce 2. And these are some of the brightest people working in Drupal who are like, okay, that's really hard. Let's not even try to do that. Let's just start again. So you don't have that issue with CiviCRM. CiviCRM does incremental updates more often than Drupal. They're adding new features more often than Drupal. Drupal 8's YAML file configuration may configure this for distribution, but in order to get to that, you'd have to actually get to Drupal 8. And I would be really afraid if I had mission-critical CRM functionality for an organization locked in to Drupal 7 with a CRM distribution. That's you're not going to be able to easily get to Drupal 8 with that. So that we have no proven distribution upgrade from a major Drupal release in anywhere in Drupal. So we have the CRM functionality, and if the CRM was being developed just as a CRM, if it wasn't the mix of CRM and CMS functionality that people are doing with it, I would be more comfortable recommending it. But that's not the way it's designed. It's designed to integrate your CMS and CRM functionality together, which seems a little scary. WordPress plus CiviCRM. I can demo this. We actually are doing more and more of these sites because there is less integration. And a lot of clients think that's a good thing, that the wall between the CRM and CMS is much more obvious. So this is a WordPress install. CiviCRM looks exactly the same down here, but it's very obvious when you're doing something in CiviCRM versus doing something in WordPress. So the mix of the admin toolbar is not there. The confusion over the configuration interfaces is not there. And really, the only time you get into the type of integration you have in Drupal is when you're adding a new post. You have this CiviCRM button here, and it allows you to grab information that exists in CiviCRM and embed it into your form using the BB code style markup that WordPress users are already used to. So there's a bigger wall there, just like the Smarty template. You can't integrate as tightly as you can with Drupal or Joomla, but for a lot of nonprofits, that's actually a good thing and something they understand. So, oops. So this can get pretty crazy because you're not actually limited to choosing just one. CiviCRM requires a parent CMS, so it doesn't handle the user account creation like Peter was talking about. It only handles the contacts. So if you want people to log in and do things themselves, they have to have WordPress or Drupal or Joomla. But it can actually integrate with multiple CMSs from that parent CMS. So you can have a CiviCRM instance that's actually pulling data and pushing data to WordPress while it's attached to Drupal, or a version that's connected to Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 at the same time. This is the type of thing that a lot of times will make your head hurt when you're trying to implement it. Large organizations like the International Mountain Biking Association has a multi-site configuration. So they're using Drupal's multi-site and creating club sites for each individual club that only allow those clubs to modify the contacts within that organization. I worked on that project. It would be so much better if they all the clubs just had their own CiviCRM instance. There's so much work to make that work correctly and manage the permissions. Because if you think about it, if I'm currently living in Minnesota and then I move to Dallas, my Civi contact exists between two different organizations, and managing who gets to edit that when that shows up is difficult. Okay, so that's all we had to go over in the presentation. I don't know if there's anything specific you wanted to go over. Do you want to do the views?
We can do views, or we can see if there's questions, and we can always
come back?
Yep.
Okay.
So what does CiviCRM use for the date construct?
Repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was, what does CiviCRM use for the date construct? The issue isn't so much the way the date is stored in the database. The issue is Drupal has standardized on the date module that is moved into core, right, in 8? Is that right? I believe that got into core. So there's a Drupal date object that handles all of the time zone conversions and everything that's happening based on your site time zone, as well as exposing that to views. And we can show, you can access Civi dates in views. You just, with full calendar or calendar, they recognize that that's not a Drupal date. So it's not using the Drupal date object to pull up the CiviCRM object, which is what we do in multi-day event. So if I'm looking at Channel Austin's site here, there's this implementation of, waiting for that to load. So this is a full calendar implementation here on the Suffolk County Democrat site using the Civi multi-day event. And you can see that they're not even trying to hide this fact in the URL here. But this part of everything is all pulling from Drupal. This is just standard Drupal information. But when I click on any of these, I'm getting put into the CiviCRM event registration. It's important to note that CiviCRM is used by a lot of large nonprofits using Drupal. If you're a member of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, they use CiviCRM as their backend. The Drupal Association uses CiviCRM as their backend. Creative Commons, Amnesty International, International Mountain Biking Association. Basically, if you're a nonprofit using Drupal, CiviCRM is kind of the go-to for that. And since a lot of political organizations use CiviCRM as well, you see that there a lot. But the key is, how do you take advantage of Drupal to get really nice looking calendar functionality like this, while at the same time, so this is just a out of the box full calendar implementation, while at the same time dealing with the CiviCRM functionality for event registration. So with full calendar, you get really nice functionality like the drag and drop Google Calendar. So what you see is that that event is actually modified in CiviCRM when I do that. So when I click on any of these, I'm actually modifying the corresponding Civi event as well. So there's a Drupal event that uses a standard date object, and then there's a Civi that uses Civi's normal date functionality. The big difference is when you have reoccurring events, Civi only knows about the first day and time of the first event and the last date and time of the last event. So it's kind of ignorant of how many times that event is reoccurring within that time period. But that's an example of where it's not the fact that dates are stored in such a bizarre method in the database that we can't possibly configure it. It's that trying to get Tim from ZivTech to support CiviCRM events in full calendar, or same thing with the calendar modules with Karen and whoever's working on that. It's asking them to do a lot and incorporate something that's not Drupal. So that's why we write modules like this. Anyone else? Questions at this point? Okay, well, do you want to try switching again? Or
actually just pull it up, I guess.
okay. Here, I'll give you this.
Good. Here, I'll This is a pre-launch version of a website that we've been working on with the TI Alumni Association, and Barbara is sitting in the back row, who is leading charge on the TI side for this project. There's been quite a few integrations here between the Drupal and CiviCRM side. One of them is the, let's see here, actually. One of them is, access denied, great. All right. I guess you have to be logged in, and let me see if I can grab my credentials out of here. They're keeping their obituaries very secret. All right, and I got a password that's alphanumeric, about 20 characters long. So, but what we've done on this particular project is that we've got contacts. They got about 27,000 contacts in the CiviCRM database. A number of those people, for historical reasons, they want to keep their records. But a lot of retired people, they want to see, hey, I worked with such and such, etc. Are they still around? Where are they? If they're deceased, I'd like to see if I can read their obituary or something of that nature. So we've been able to go in on the CiviCRM side, there is a flag, is deceased, so we're checking for that, pulling that into a view, and then displaying the people there, allowing people to search through it. And then if obviously there's many more of those records than the ones that have obituaries associated with them, but we have it linked up so that there is a list of people. Yeah, go ahead and let's see if,
Get this to work.
so we have a list of people there that you can see both from the CiviCRM database, all the people that are deceased, and you can see it in a nice grid format. And on the flip side, you can also see on the Drupal side that it's linked up to the obituaries. More recently there, we've been doing a little bit of an upgrade for their profile functionality. If you have a website with CiviCRM where you can just look at the name and address profile on the user registration page.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, this is
Oh yeah, we switched again. But the interesting part there is, this is again with the TI Alumni Association, is most of you are familiar with the traditional Drupal user page, right, where you can go in and you can change your password, or if you add some fields to the profile. And then if you add CiviCRM to it, you can expose your different profile sets. So anything from name and address to custom fields to whatever you define there. One of the challenges there has been is a lot of TI alumni have spouses that either work there or that they just like to, they're a member even though they're not a retiree or an alumni, but they're part of the association as a spouse. So they have also a record in the database. And the challenge that we've had there was, how do you display somebody's record and at the same time display the spouse? So this is, again, what we did with some relationships in CiviCRM. You can define a spouse relationship. So you can say one person is a spouse of the other. And then when we're displaying one person's user profile on the Drupal side, we're hooking through views, looking up that relationship, and then displaying some select information actually on the profile page that says spouse information right there. And by default, we're also assigning them a ability to edit that context, so that if I'm the alumni and my spouse is also a member via that membership, I can click on edit their contact information and update it as well. So it's more, can you just go to /user?
yeah, I was just doing that. So the Wi-Fi's gotten incredibly slow.
Yeah, we need to do one of the Steve Jobs. Do not use Wi-Fi. Any other questions from people that are using it or thinking of using it?
I mean, it looks pretty straightforward to me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But it looks pretty straightforward to me. It's not you're not secretly hiding in your back pocket. It's a pain in the butt to work with or anything, right?
Is Drupal, the question is this pretty straightforward, or is it are we hiding something that is difficult? I mean, this is not something, I mean, yes, you can go on Bluehost and do a one-click install, and then you're going to come away with very bitter taste in your mouth, just because, and I'm not pouncing on Bluehost in particular, but again, it's one of that hostile type web hosting offerings that it just doesn't scale very well. I mean, we do hosting for our clients at Square, and we've literally had clients that have come to us because their pages took 15 seconds to load. And we've kind of built our name in the community for helping with a lot of the Drupal CiviCRM installations, so they came to us and say, can you help us out and figure out why it's running 15 seconds. We've got a budget to improve the performance. And the caveat was, the pages were loading in 15 seconds, but only 50% of the time. The other 50% of the time, it just got a white page.
So you're definitely proposing, get started with like a Pantheon instance.
Either Pantheon, or I mean, if you want to play around, you can start with a VPS or something. But I mean, there is a variety of options. But shared web hosting, where they're going to give you 96 megs of PHP memory, that's just not going to get you too far. So we took their installation as is, right? I think it was on GoDaddy. Don't quote me on that. But we just took it as is, dropped it onto our server, and it went from 15 seconds down to 4. Okay, just that. Now, then we could actually go in and start optimizing and got it under half a second easily. So, are there challenges between Drupal and CiviCRM? For sure. But it's no different than working in Drupal with contrib modules and things conflicting or requiring particular version of something here and there. While I was here, we just found a bug in the latest release of something that we were trying to implement in CiviCRM. It's open source. It's got its own community.
So the other thing is it is a lot like Drupal with the secret sauce and special handshakes. So once you know those things, it's quite a bit easier. And just like Drupal, it's nobody's real job to provide documentation and support for CiviCRM. So all of the information you need to use CiviCRM is effectively out there. Along with that, there's 90% of the information that's outdated or just wrong that is also out there. So being able to find the information, and one of the quickest things that helps and gets people past this is the integration with views in CiviCRM. And this can be confusing to configure. So if I'm looking at the CiviCRM tables, on Pantheon everything is in the same database. Normally best practice is to keep your CRM data separated from your CMS data. That's not possible on Pantheon because of the dev test live workflow. But if you look at all of these tables, I mean, all of these CiviCRM prefix tables were created on the initial install. That is twice as many tables as Drupal creates. So if you're like, is this a pain in the ass? Well, if you know what you're doing, no. But if you are trying to do something really simple and all you need is a basic web form, CiviCRM is probably not the best way to do. If you need a basic lead generation and you're eventually going to do something substantially more complicated, then yeah, that's the way to go. So the next session is starting at 10:30, right? Yeah, so we need to clear out of here. But we can definitely talk afterwards with whoever still has questions about this stuff. Oh.